Hey everyone and welcome to our new video. This is the Bissell CrossWave and we reviewed this wet and dry vacuum cleaner for you. You'll find all our results here in this video, so just stay tuned. Let's go. Before we get to the usage, we'll first give you an overview of the product in our Features and Technology section. The Bissell is a wet and dry vacuum cleaner, which is suitable for cleaning various hard floors, such as vinyl, tiles, or laminate. To avoid any nasty surprises, it is important to make sure that the floor is sealed. Compared to many other wet and dry vacuum cleaners on the market, however, the Bissell has another bonus. In addition to hard floors, it can also be used to clean carpets. Sadly, this CrossWave cannot be used cordlessly. Accordingly, its cable is about 7.5 meters or long and offers a sufficiently large operating radius. It also includes a cable holder on the handle which can be used to prevent the cable from dragging on the floor. However, if you don't fancy the cable, the CrossWave is also available in a cordless version, meaning with a battery instead of a cable. As far as the scope of delivery is concerned, the Bissell comes with functional equipment without a lot of unnecessities. The focus is on the appliance itself, of course. A cleaning brush roll is already included in the base of the appliance, and a filter along with the 2 tanks have already been inserted. Remo will show us exactly where to find it all in a moment. In addition, there's also the parking and cleaning tray, including an attachment for drying the cleaning brush roll, as well as a small bottle of multi-cleaner to try out, and of course, the mandatory paperwork. The Bissell is quite stingy in terms of features, but a minimum level of comfort can still be found. On the one hand, the device has the ability to stand on its own, which is particularly important when storing it and while taking a break. The hooks on the handle are particularly useful for storage, as they allow you to wind up the cable to save space. There's also a carrying handle on the main unit. On the other hand, the Bissell can perform some kind of self-cleaning with the aforementioned cleaning tray. We'll take a closer look at whether this works as well later in the video. By the way, you can find the link to the Bissell CrossWave below the video in the description. We will also link the battery-powered version for you there. And if the video was helpful to you, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Now I have the Bissell CrossWave here laying on my desk. First things first, I would like to answer 2 general questions. The first one is, what can a wet and dry vacuum cleaner do? That's pretty easy to answer. Basically, this device unites a mop and a vacuum cleaner all in one, so we can save a decent amount of time while cleaning. A pleasant side effect is that you can use such an appliance to pick up dirt that is both wet and coarse, meaning liquids with solid particles in one go. And the second question is, how does such a device work? Basically, the appliances all seem to be built in a similar way, and often just use a 2-tank system where you have fresh water at the top and used water at the bottom. And I'll show you how this works. You simply remove the top of the tank, fill it up with fresh, clean water, screw the lid back on, and refill the tank. When you now start the appliance, clean water is fed down to the brush roll. Dirt is picked up here, sucked out, and then fed into the dirty water tank. We have a filter up here, and when you open the tank, there is another small float stack inside. This simply ensures that the tank is not overfilled. When the tank is full, you can simply empty it into a drain like a sink or toilet. You can then reassemble it, insert it into the appliance, fill it with fresh water, and continue your cleaning work. Now it is time to take a closer look at whether the system delivers what it promises in our practical review. Let's see what this thing can do in the first part of our practical review, namely the cleaning performance. We put together several difficulty levels for the CrossWave so that you can better assess how far you can go with the device. We start on a very easy difficulty with level 1, dry and liquid dirt. On the right, we see some instant cappuccino powder, and on the left, we have some sprinkles. That shouldn't really be a problem for the Bissell, and as you can see, 1 sweep to the front and 1 to the back again, and your job is done. Even a load of juice on the floor is no challenge for the appliance. 2 sweeps again and that's it. Level 1, clear. Let's now combine dry and liquid dirt and move on to level 2, viscous liquids. Yogurt, ketchup, and applesauce are a little more difficult to pick up, but again, the Bissell performs relatively well. Back and forth once or twice and the stains are gone. Level 2, clear. Let's move on to the next level of difficulty. Level 3, wet coarse dirt. In other words, a liquid with solid particles. In our case, cornflakes with milk. Most wet and dry vacuum cleaners advertise that this should not be a problem. And indeed, the Bissell does pick up such dirt. However, if there is a lot of it on the floor, the dirt can accumulate in front of the base of the appliance and then simply be pushed away. Although this is a bit annoying, it is manageable by going over it once or twice. The same applies if we take it up a notch and spread a load of canned corn on the floor. In this case, you can see how it should ideally work. 2 sweeps as usual. Well, it seems great, but admittedly it was more comparable to the flakes when we tried it off-cam. This means that you may well have to go over it again, but the bottom line is that we are more or less satisfied with both runs. So, level 3, clear. Let's move on to one of the biggest challenges for this kind of wet and dry vacuum cleaner, and thus to our boss level, Raw egg with its shell. The raw egg itself is usually not a problem. The real challenge is the shell itself. And in fact, this is exactly where the problem lies. The gooey stuff itself is picked up, but the shell is too big for the intake slot, and so you push it in front of you. If you crush the shell, it looks a little different. In this case, the appliance is still able to pick up a lot of it. That's good to know, of course. But who'll bend down and crush some dirt on the ground only so that the wet and dry vacuum cleaner can pick it up? That's probably not what most people would do. You'd probably reach for the kitchen towel. With this in mind, boss level, partially clear. From our point of view, we reviewed the essentials of what this cleaning device can do. As many of you probably have a bunch of children at home who like to drag in dirt from outside, we'll make a short detour on the subject of sand and mud. The tough and sticky mud in particular is not always easy for the wet and dry vacuum cleaners, especially when there is a lot of it on the floor. But, as you can see, the Bissel does a reasonably good job. The cleaning brush drags the dirt behind it a little, so you have to go over it again. But in the end, the result is absolutely fine. In comparison with the other appliances we reviewed, the CrossWave actually performs quite well. In this respect, we can say that this detour is cleared. If we summarize the results, the bottom line is that the Bissel has cleared most of our stages. How did it achieve this? From our point of view, there are two main factors for its good performance. Firstly, the technical concept seems to be quite well developed. All the different parts are perfectly coordinated with each other and work as they should. Secondly, the size of the intake slot is sufficient as well as the suction power, which is quite strong. This combo leads to the fact that even larger pieces of dirt are picked up relatively well. Together with the somewhat fuzzy design of the brush roll, it is therefore not surprising that a good cleaning performance is also achieved on smooth surfaces such as tiles. Basically, the job is done with just a few strokes. It only pushes the eggshell in front of it, but that was to be expected. Still, in fact, we were particularly impressed with the tile and its joint cleaning. Most of the competitors which we reviewed had difficulties here. The Bissel, on the other hand, got the joints clean for the most of it. Let's move on to the special feature of the Bissell CrossWave, namely carpet cleaning. In terms of the test setting, we first got ourselves an old carpet and prepared it accordingly. In other words, we spread mud, ketchup, juice, and coffee on the carpet, and then rubbed all of it into its fibers. We then left everything to dry for a few hours, then loaded the Bissel with water and the cleaning solution supplied and tackled the stains in carpet mode. Let's take a quick look at the mud stain first. As you can see, you have to go over it quite often, but apart from that, it turned out quite well. You can still see some minor residues, but there's not really much to complain about. Now the ketchup stain. Here you have to sweep over it quite often as well. As a result, the stain faded, but is still recognizable. This is obviously the limit of the appliance. And now the remaining two stains. Again, you need a lot of sweeps. In the end, however, the appliance got both the juice and the coffee out to some extent. The coffee stain did return a little bit after drying, but we were still satisfied in the end. If you look at the results, you'll see that there is a clear difference. It is fair to say that the Bissel is able to handle easy to medium levels of dirt. Ultimately, however, the appliance cannot be described as a specialized carpet cleaner. Tough stains will prove themselves to be a constant challenge for the CrossWave. And as a reminder, you can find the link to the Bissell CrossWave below the video in the description. We also included the battery-powered version below, and if the video was helpful to you, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. In terms of handling, the CrossWave is one of the more bulky devices. This does not mean that it is difficult to handle, but the weight of 5.4 kilograms does get a little heavy over time. Nevertheless, the Bissell wet and dry vacuum cleaner does not lack maneuverability and precision. The only thing is that it's relatively loud compared to other devices we reviewed. We have a noise level of approximately 77 decibels. On the other hand, we had no problems with its operation. We simply used the controls on the handle to select the desired surface, meaning carpet or hard floor, and then use the switch on the inside to regulate the water supply. You get used to it pretty fast. Getting under furniture is also no problem with the Bissel. The base of the appliance is only 5 to 6 centimeters, so it should normally fit under the couch or your bed. What you should know, however, the fact that the base fits underneath does not mean that you can get underneath it completely. Above a certain angle of inclination, the brush roll lifts off and can no longer clean properly. This can also be problematic if you want to reach the back of the wall, even if the cupboard is hanging relatively high. A recurring issue with these wet and dry vacuum cleaners is how well they can clean around the edges. In our test with cappuccino powder, you can see how Bissel also reaches its limits here. The brush roll is centered in the base of the appliance and therefore not directly on the wall. As a result, a clearly visible streak of dirt remains. If you approach it head-on, it doesn't change much as well. Even though of the fact that the suction power lies a bit in front of the brush, it doesn't quite reach into the corner. The situation is similar if we use ketchup instead of cappuccino powder. It only picks up what's close to the brush itself. Everything between the wall and the brush roll remains largely untouched. What's also a bit annoying during usage is that you have to empty the dirty water tank relatively often. You may have already noticed this when Remo introduced the tanks at the beginning of the video. The fresh water tank holds 800 milliliters, and the apparently larger dirty water tank is only supposed to hold 500 milliliters? Something's not quite right, or is it? In fact, although the dirty water tank looks large, the integrated float stack sounds the alarm as soon as you reach the relatively low set full mark. The effective volume is therefore much smaller than you'd initially think. To put this into perspective, however, it must be said that the other wet and dry vacuum cleaners in our test basically proceed in exactly the same way and place the mark relatively far down on the dirty water tank. Sadly, you have to make do with that. Still, we would advise that you make sure to buy one with a decent capacity. With 500 milliliters, like with the CrossWave, you will be all right. More is better, of course. If possible, it should not be less, though. Of course, it is important to clean the wet and dry vacuum cleaner regularly so that it can perform its duties for as long as possible. This is particularly important for this type of appliance, as inadequate cleaning can also lead to odors and mold. The minimum you should therefore do is empty the dirty water tank after you have finished your work, preferably directly into the toilet. Then rinse the tank at the sink with running water and clean the cover with the float stack carefully. The filter obviously does not come into contact with the dirt from the tank that much. At least we only see some dry particles on the filter box and in the filter itself. This is actually not the case with all appliances. We have also seen moldy filters. Admittedly, they're made differently. Nevertheless, in our opinion, the Bissel offers a much better solution. Before you tackle the dirty water tank, you can, if you wish, clean the brush roll first. This works semi-automatically via the self-cleaning function. Grab the cleaning tray and fill the area for the brush roll with water up to the max mark. Then place the appliance in the bowl, pull the handle back slightly, otherwise it will not begin, then start the appliance. Please make sure that the CrossWave does not switch itself off. Let the cleaner run for a while, and then switch it off yourself. Well, this all sounds pretty good, but here's a tip. Don't expect too much. Obviously, the cleaning process concentrates mainly on the brush roll. The surrounding area is not cleaned, or only cleaned to a limited extent. The appliance is only relatively clean in the area in front of the suction opening. The cover, on the other hand, is still quite dirty. If you take a closer look at the brush roll, you can see that it is not completely clean. Dark discolorations are still clearly visible, especially if you pull the brush roll fibers apart a little. However, we think it is good that hardly any coarse dirt particles remained. Nonetheless, the brush roll should be thoroughly washed out. You'll be able to squeeze out a lot out of it by hand. As far as the suction channel for the dirty water is concerned, Bissel unfortunately does not come with any cleaning tools. Instead, you should help yourself, for example with a long and soft brush. In any case, we would recommend not leaving this area completely untreated, as odors can easily build up here. As far as the base of the appliance is concerned, you will have to use a cloth or something like that. If necessary, you can also take it to the sink and work carefully under running water. Let's get to our conclusion. The Bissell CrossWave is a mid-range wet and dry vacuum cleaner that made a solid impression in terms of its cleaning performance. There is perhaps still a little room for improvement with wet coarse dirt, but the Bissell generally performed well on hard floors. On carpets, it at least manages to deal with light to medium dirt. Not every wet and dry vacuum cleaner can do this, so it is definitely a plus from our point of view. We are also satisfied with the operation and handling. The cleaning in peripheral areas could perhaps be a little better, and the weight and volume were not quite as appealing. But that's it. All in all, we come to the conclusion that the price and performance ratio is pretty good. So if you have children in the house or struggle a lot with coarse dirt for other reasons, the Bissell CrossWave could be an interesting everyday helper for you. So we've tested this wet and dry vacuum cleaner for you. If you liked it, take a look at the video description below, because we linked the product for you there. Otherwise, I'd be happy if you'd stay tuned. We'll have a few interesting video suggestions for you in our end card.